Hey everyone, Eric Beans with Happy, CEO of Happy, getting ready to talk to you about a few things that can save your project and make sure that while you're working to build your product, that you're not going to sink by making some mistakes that I've made in the past and many others have too. And figured I'd share a couple of them, and hopefully, if you're building your company right now, building your software, these tips will help you. Tip number one: back in the day, you used to go build Apple app, Android app, and and then your standard web app, which is what people would log into from their desktop. Those are three different code bases. So nowadays, the idea of getting an Android app, an Apple app, and having your web-based portion, which should be a liquid screen, where it adapts to all different screen sizes. And for those who haven't dove into this yet, browser compatibility is a real pain because there are numerous browsers and then there's numerous screen sizes. So you want everything to um, load and format beautifully on every screen. That's not easy. That's actually quite a bit of work, especially if you have an app with a lot of pages. You spend a lot of time doing that. Then when you actually do an update for your software, you have to go into a separate code base to update your Apple, separate code base to update your Android. So three code bases, you could have three different teams. That's a lot of money for a startup. So uh, go with a progressive web app. Skip the app stores. There used to be an advantage to being in the app stores where people would actually go shopping and find apps in the app store. That doesn't happen anymore. There's no advantage to that. You're not going to get, you're not going to get a whole lot of, if any, organic traffic by being in the Apple or Android store. It's going to be people that look for you specifically because there's so many apps in there now. Plus, the Apple App Store actually takes a lot of your money. Um, so tip number one: progressive web app. Word of the day. That way, you have one code base. It works on all mobile. It actually operates even without internet to a degree, so it acts as an app to a large degree. It'll cut your costs. It's going to make browser compatibility a lot easier. You will only have one team, and when you update the code base, it works for desktop and mobile. Clean, easy, and simple, and way more cost efficient. Uh, Tip number two is dealing with code and code bases. Make sure that you have your own, as a CEO, if you're a non-technical CEO, you're not doing your programming, make sure you have your code base downloaded currently, that you don't have a team or a coder that will take that code and own it or shut it down or not push it up. If you have a coder that's out there that's saying, hey, I'm just doing it on my laptop, fire that person. Just fire them. Get another one, because you don't want it local. If something happens to that person, you don't want all of your work that you're paying for stuck on a laptop. And candidly, they should have test tools and have that going up and to the code base so that you can track what's happening, see what's happening, test what's happening, validate what's happening. So if you're not technical at all, I use GitLab. Other people use GitHub. Ever since Microsoft bought it, I decided I didn't want to do that. Also got an Amazon, so the code base is in two different places. Should disaster strike, there's a backup of a backup. So that is your intellectual property. That's your money. So you want to make sure that you protect it accordingly, and that you have somebody that will go in and validate that your coding team is doing what they're supposed to do, because human beings are human beings. And if you're paying somebody, 10 grand a month, 15 grand a month, whatever you're paying for a team or an individual, you want to validate that that work is actually being done and being done according to standard coding parameters. So I've been ripped off by this in the past numerous times from numerous programmers, and it'll never happen again, because now I actually go in and validate it, validate the testing tools, validate the codes there, look at the code base, open it, read the readmes and the other information, make sure that the API is according to standard API standards and not just using, push and pull instead of the proper terminology. Certain people aren't using API standards for REST API standards, and it will show up in the language. There's all sorts of stuff, and without getting nerdy, validate it, learn, go check it, own your code. And by the way, don't get attached to a certain coder. Obviously, you want to be loyal, but if you sense that things aren't right, Don't think, oh my God, my project's going to die if I get rid of this coder. It's pretty easy to bring in somebody else that can come in and take over the code. A lot of the code, if it's garbage anyway, you're going to want to replace that person. Some other coder may come in and say, okay, this is formulated properly, I can work with it. Or they might say it's garbage and we need to start over. Either way, it's a win. You don't want to have a coder in there that's doing garbage work and not documenting accordingly so that nobody else can work on the product, or else you won't be able to scale. There are a lot of other things when it comes to scaling, your session testing and your AWS. Luckily for all entrepreneurs out there, Amazon is fantastic for people that used to have very, very deep DevOps groups. Can now spin up servers, put elastic load balancers, and some things on there to make sure that you're able to actually function at a pretty high level without having a huge DevOps team and having to go in and do kernel development or anything along those lines. That is great news, moving forward. On the actual marketing side, make sure that you're gathering your data and that you own your data. So if you're doing your marketing, you want your emails, your opt-in list, you get your cell phones, get your texting, and make sure that you actually have permission to text so that people opt in. You're going to want that because there's really a couple different ways to grow your company. One is to pay people for their database. The other is to develop your own. In the beginning, you're probably going to have to pay people to a degree to access their database and market. But really, what you really want to do is, start to control your own destiny, and that means controlling your own data. The most powerful ways to grow are not offering people financial incentives. A lot of companies that are out there will say, hey, I'll give you, $20. I'll give you $50. I'll give you $100 if you come in and do, X, Y, and Z. And quite frankly, nobody cares. Nobody cares. I mean, you're going to get a lot of people that may come in and, use your discount. And then you know what they're going to do? They're going to leave. And then your churn rate's up. Churn rate is a big deal. If you're going to ever look to get VC money, if you're ever going to look to bring on, a bigger group that's looking to acquire you or anything along those lines, they're going to want to know what your churn is, because that's really going to determine exactly what you can and can't do as far as growth. If people are staying, it's a good sign for the company. If they're leaving, they're not. Another tip, make sure that when you roll out your product that your first impression is good. Everyone wants to rush out a product, and there's a lot of books that say, hey, hurry up and rush it. But you never get a chance, as the old saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. If you're rolling out something with a bunch of bugs and it's clunky and it's slow, I understand that you want to just get it out the door, but your initial customers are there for you and are a lot more loyal. You're probably going to want to make sure you take that extra 3-4 weeks to debug it, get it clean, work through some of the kinks, test it yourself, and make sure it works so that first impression is good. It doesn't have to be great, but it has to be functional to do what you say it's going to do. One of the things when you're designing your product, make sure you think of a product lead acquisition model. It's the same model that's been used for Zoom and Cash App and everything else. Basically, when someone uses your product and they need to send money, for example, with Cash App, they'll send, hey, you just received $50 from Cash App. Well, the person who gets it, once they're $50, now they have to go set up an account in order to access their $50 that you sent them. That is a lead generation tool. Same thing with, Calendly and a lot of these other groups that are out there, Dropbox. Hey, I got a link. Here's a file from Dropbox. Great. Now somebody has a free account with Dropbox. Hey, I set up a meeting through Calendly. Great. Now you have a new customer for Calendly because they have to sign up in order to actually functionally use it. Every major company that has grown at a very high rate, from Slack to Calendly, Dropbox, Facebook, even Netflix, Uber, all these companies actually have people that are referring, because the nature of the actual app and technology itself requires some element of sharing and some element of self-marketing. So the customer actually inherently will be sharing the app for other people to use and access either data, money, functional services or products, and they actually have to do it. And In a lot of cases too, it'll be at the bottom of the text. Hey, you just received money from Cash App. So it's a self-perpetuating PLA, and to many degrees also it's its own billboard. And that requires some thought on your business plan. Whatever your business model is, think about how people will actually be able to share it so that you can work on user acquisition without spending a ton of money on marketing. That's what that we'll go through more tips later, but I like to keep these tight under 10 minutes. Those are some tips for entrepreneurs on the software side. Please share your tips. Please click the like button so you can follow us. And for all you entrepreneurs out there building your products, man, keep doing it. We're excited to see what everybody's doing and be part of the community to help where we can. And we're looking for help too, man. Any advice that you have for me, I'm open to it. Everybody have a great night. Be happy, and we'll do this again soon. Bye-bye.